Welcome, everyone, to Chirping Zebras podcast, episode 26. Mark Riley alongside Gino Bender Jr., as always, and coming to you from AOA Studios in Beverly, our favorite place to tape a podcast and the best place on the North Shore to tape whatever you're looking to tape. And also want to thank our sponsor, the Referees Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And as always, they're our best and brightest sponsor, and we appreciate all they do. And we're going to bring our guest on right away because we want to get into stuff, all kinds of stuff tonight. He is one of the top referees in Hockey East currently right now. He's done a bunch of different leagues from youth all the way up to pro. And he also, get this, has done comedy shows with me. And he's one of our best buds. We want to welcome Walker HOLTON to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here today, guys.
Yeah, no, it's we were so happy that you were able to do it, and we've had some fun both on the rink and out of the rink, on the stage. So we're happy to have you here, man.
I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah. Now we want to, before we get into the hockey stuff, just last week the Olympics ended, and it's the summer games. Winter is my favorite because of hockey and the two-man luge, but. The summer games were last week. Now, I just want to get your quick thoughts. I mean, my first thought was the opening ceremonies. I'm like, I couldn't believe what I saw in the opening ceremonies. Honestly, I was hoping France did what they usually do and just retreat and surrender it to another country. That's how bad the opening.
They probably should have.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get all up in arms with all the BS that went on with it, but it was like you want the stadium, the light show, the boat. I think it was just too forced. I don't know. But
it was just a lot of stuff they seemed to be pushing.
It was.
But it's France.
Exactly.
Not that we don't, if you're watching in France, well, thank you for watching in France. But, I thought some of the stuff, I love watching the sports you don't get to watch.
Right.
Not the stupid ones like trampolining. But I like watching like the track and the swimming and the diving.
Those are the best.
Like stuff you don't throw that on the weekend, and you get insight and you get to watch athletes at their best, unless it's the Australian breakdancer. Did you see her?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Holy shit, she was terrible.
I missed. But I saw somebody actually imitating her, did her whole routine.
Really?
And did the same thing. And I'm like, that's an Olympic sport.
Awful.
Yeah.
I mean, the top 10 were phenomenal. I mean, it's impressive, but holy shit, was she
my
bad.
nephew could have done that.
But I think it's courageous. I mean, to watch everybody else and then be like, hey, check out this routine.
Right?
And to do it like, she had confidence. She wasn't like, I don't know if I'm going to do the rabbit or whatever. Like, she owned it, I thought.
Yeah.
Do the Wednesday.
She had 100% confidence and 0% skill. But she's an Olympic athlete, so she got that
Pretty
going
good.
for her. She was scrapping, as we say.
scrapping.
I mean, one of my highlights outside of beach volleyball, women's beach volleyball, which we talked about with
Yes.
Dale last week, Dale Arnold, our guest last week, which that might be the single best sport going at the Olympics for obvious reasons. The French pole vaulter. I couldn't believe it. The happiest and saddest reason to lose the gold medal.
Right.
Right? I mean, that you can't say that poor guy.
I'm on like 6 text chains, and that was on every one of them.
I'm just thinking, like, wouldn't you duct tape that thing? I mean, you know what you're going to do.
And he knew as soon as he hit the bar, too, he knew what happened. He just was like, come on. But, the benders don't have to worry about that.
Well, people that lose races, you have that story for your whole life of like, man, I just lost by this much. And he's like, I lost by this much.
Yeah, he did. He did. I couldn't believe, like, I heard, this is what, I don't know if it's true, but I read on the internet, his mom had a watch party with the whole family.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, the whole family was there, and the neighborhood and stuff. Imagine watching your son, and, like, the dad was proud, right? But mom, sitting there watching, and every family has that uncle, right? That uncle that was a little tipsy on the wine,
Yeah.
and was like, holy shit, he just knocked the bar down with his cock, right? Like, that uncle is there. We all have that uncle. I couldn't.
it's so funny.
I couldn't believe it. It was just remarkable.
Oh, that's
remarkable. But I enjoy watching it. I mean, there's some. Now, here's a trivia question for anyone. Although I'm going to give you the answer. There's 5 sports in the Summer Games that the U.S. has not medaled in. 3 of which I'm proud that they haven't. But there's 5 sports they have not medaled in at all in the history of the games. One being badminton, which is just ridiculous. Table tennis, right? Dominated by the continent of Asia. Trampolining, which is the dumbest freaking sport ever. I say combine it with archery.
I thought we'd be good at that.
Yeah, no, well, you would think, but with everyone having a trampoline. The only time it's watchable is when they miss coming down. That's the only time I like it.
Wait, when you said you want to combine it with archery, is the person on the trampoline got the bow or somebody else is trying to get them?
They got to go up 10 times up and down without taking an arrow, and then they get a medal. That's my idea to make it watchable. But those 3, and then rhythmic gymnastics, which I always found fascinating and incredibly talented, but just kind of like, why you doing gymnastics with a ball, or a ribbon? I never got that. And then the last one is handball, which is a crazy sport.
And we never medaled in it?
Never medaled in handball, but that's a big European thing, the handball. It's like, it's not something that you really... I don't know. You don't see it a lot here.
I don't know anybody that plays it or.
I grew up playing with it down in L Street Bathhouse. They had the outdoor 3-wall court. It was like my uncles and my father always played.
That's like racquetball type. This is like you're holding a ball and you're
handball, like legit handball. Like I used to play. I used to play. Used to get the gloves. So like you would wear like one glove, and then like I put like some guys put a sponge in their hand, like a.
I think you're thinking about a different sport that's also called handball, though.
Oh, I'm thinking
handball is when you whack the ball. Your handball, the Southie handball, whacking it against the wall like a racquetball.
Yes,
there's always a bunch of dudes that are 70 years old at the YMCA playing that.
Yes.
This is like you're holding a ball.
Hold the ball and you throw it in the net.
Yeah. You got to dribble.
Yes, that
and
looks
they jump
awesome.
in the air. We've never medaled in that. It's more of a European thing.
Really?
Yeah,
I can see that.
I mean, that's fun to watch. I actually got into watching that, and that was pretty good. That was and the regular volleyball. I love watching that, especially the guys. They just they hit that ball so freaking hard. It's insane. Well, the girls do too. There's some girls out there that can wallop it. Wallop it. I don't know where that came from, but all in all, I mean, it's a great watch.
But I mean, you guys are comedians. I mean, that's got to be like material for you guys when you're watching that shit. Like, gold, absolute pure gold, Jerry, pure gold.
It's gold, Jerry.
We're watching the synchronized swimming, and then my wife goes, "That's gonna be Riley's gonna come up with a bit with those uniforms."
Oh, I love the under the water camera. That's what I like. I'll be honest with you. Glad you bring that up. I have probably 10, 15 minutes of material on it.
Yeah.
But the synchronized diving was one that when I first saw it, I was like, cut the shit.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But, it's pretty impressive. Although I think cannonballing should be an Olympic sport if we're going to have that, right? Give the fat fucks a chance. That's what I say.
The guy in Hawaii would win that. Like when we went on a honeymoon, there was just this big Hawaiian, right? And he would jump off the big rock. There was a place in the North Country up there, and it was a huge friggin' rock. And he would just jump with a football, and he would hold the football. And as soon as he landed, that football went higher than the friggin' rock. It was unreal.
Now that's an Olympic sport.
I was like, that looks like an Olympic sport.
Yeah, all day. Yeah. The coolest story, I think, there was a few cool stories, but the coolest story was the kid who won the gold medal in surfing. So it was held in Fiji, like the French Polynesian Islands or whatever. And the kid that won it grew up in the village where the competition happened.
Sick.
So he knew the wave. He knew that that was
home court
where he
advantage.
grew up. And he caught the perfect wave and ended up winning the gold medal in front of his whole family,
That's
friends,
awesome.
village, the whole thing. That I think was the coolest story. I mean, that's like the world's, everything aligns and you win it in your home court. Kind of like you doing all those games at the Garden to end your career.
Yeah, I was fortunate. Very fortunate.
Yeah. So, but enough about the Olympics. we got to talk some hockey too.
Absolutely.
And obviously some refereeing because we're Zebras. And one thing that I'd love to find out, because we all have a story. We all have a way of how we found refereeing, right? And everyone's story is a little different. Some started, really young. Some came into it after they stopped playing because they got hurt.
I had no choice.
But yeah, you were forced into it.
Yeah.
As child labor. But how'd you become a referee?
Yeah, so I started playing hockey when I was about 6 years old. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. But both my parents are from Windsor, Ontario, so they're both Canadian. And my brother, I have an older brother as well. He's 4 years older than me, and we started playing right around the same time. And my dad, he coached our teams here and there, but he wasn't like always coaching. My dad was like, you know what? I'm at the rink so much. Maybe I should start reffing. Like, I'm here so much anyway, I might as well make a little bit of money. So my dad started reffing. I just lived at the rink for the most part. And then around, I think, 11 or 12 years old, I think it was the 1999-2000 season, I started refereeing. I think it was either 11 or 12 when I started. And I think I started a little too young. How old were you?
I was 11.
Were you 11?
Yep. And Sweeney was 12. Yeah. We
And
went to the seminar together, yeah.
So I think it was a little too young.
It is.
Because that 12 years old, I remember getting yelled at by like a 40-year-old coach and getting that feeling of like, I don't want to come back. I don't want to do this again, but I don't want to disappoint my dad. But when you get to be like 14 and you have that arrogant teenage attitude, like that's when you should start, where you have that little bit of edge.
So Massachusetts now, you can't ref until you're 14. So that's,
really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, hold on. You said the 1999-2000?
Yeah.
So that stupidity has been happening for a long, long time. 40-year-old men yelling at,
Oh,
12,
that hasn't
13-year-old
changed. That
kids.
will never change.
Yeah. So it's not just now that there's video everywhere. I just wanted to point that out. That stupidity has been happening forever.
All right.
So, and all right, keep going. Because, was there only one, because at Orlando,
Yeah.
was there one rink, or was there, at that time, I mean, I know it kind of exploded at some point, but.
So I started at this place called Rock on Ice is what it was called. And then it changed to United Skates of America.
Oh, Jesus.
But it was...
That's Florida all day.
Yep.
It was Rock on Ice, and it was like a garbage place, really close to like Universal Studios and all that. I started off there, and then they opened up this new complex called the RDV Sportsplex. It's where the Solar Bears practice.
Okay.
And that place is beautiful. And so I moved over and started, playing there. I played house league when I started, and then my dad was like, we're not ruining every weekend by traveling around. And it's so expensive to play in Florida.
I bet.
So I continued to referee and stopped playing ice hockey for a while, but I was still playing roller because that was cheap, and there was a place really close to my home for it. And then I got on a midget team when I was 16, and they let me, we did fundraiser, everything, but it didn't cost any money. I had a car, I could drive. So I started playing travel again at 16, but I was reffing at the same time. And there were some times where I remember stopping playing for a team and then refereeing those games, like as a midget, and seeing teams that we'd play against, like kind of start to figure it out. Like, I think this guy played for this team.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I refereed up until I went to the University of Central Florida. I refereed through college, such a great way to make money. And then I got a degree in finance, and I'm like, what do I really like doing? And I loved refereeing. I kind of moved to Chicago on a whim and didn't really know anybody other than one of my brother's friends that I was living with. And I knew one guy in the referee community who's just like, yeah, man, come to Chicago. There's plenty of games. And moved there, worked a few jobs while I was refereeing, and then got an opportunity mid-season, a referee quit. That was working for the Atlantic Junior Hockey League and the Metropolitan Junior Hockey League, and there was an apartment in Norwood. And I found out about that. One of my buddies, a good buddy of mine, Camden Knuckles, told me, like, hey, this guy quit. It was his roommate. And he's like, nobody knows. Like, I can put in a word for you. I already knew Chris Allman, who was in charge of it. So, like, a week later, I moved out. This was back in 2011. I moved to Norwood and started refereeing full-time then for the USA Hockey Officiating Development Program.
Wow, that's awesome.
Chris Allman. I worked the finals with him in the USHL.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was awesome. What a hell of a linesman he was. And then I worked Atlantic hockey with him, and I think he's done now. But, Yeah.
He was great. I learned a ton from him.
Oh, yeah. He was awesome.
He was a guy that, actually, I think he was one of the main turning points that changed my officiating career.
Right.
That year, I was having a really good year once I moved out, and I had a couple of tough games, but I handled the situations well. And he took me out 3 days in a row in Scranton, PA, to do power skating. And it made a world of difference. Like these 3 hours I spent on the ice with him completely changed my stride. I was so much faster and more efficient. And it just I was ready for the next level because I became a way better skater for the time that he volunteered to just take me power skating.
That's awesome.
That's
I think skating is one of the things that I think is so important, and we talk about it.
Yeah.
But like if you can't get from A to B, then you can't be in position and you can't make the call. But power skating specifically, like I spent I think it was national camp up at Lake Placid, USA Hockey National Camp. We did power skating every morning from like 7 to 8:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And would run to the rink, do the power skating. That week completely changed the way I skated. And that was when we ended the week skating without laces. Like that was and I learned then I used to tie my ankles up and tape them. And I went from that to tying them like as loose as my sneakers. Now, not everyone can do that, but I that completely changed the way I tie my skates.
I love those camps. So the first day you get in there, you rate your skating, and then you get on the power skating, and then they have you re-rank it. Everyone's like 8 or 9, right? They all think they're good skaters, and then after you do the power skating, you're like, all right, re-rank yourself. Everyone's 4s and 5s.
That's crazy. It's true.
It is.
It's so true.
You definitely get into some bad skating habits and don't even realize it.
Exactly.
And I'd already done a bunch of power skating at regional camps and things like that. But having that one-on-one, I remember Chris Allman broke it down to where I wasn't getting my weight into my stride. Like I wasn't, and he kind of compared it to like, if you're going to punch somebody, you don't just do that. You get your whole body weight into it. And once that kind of clicked where I could use my body weight to my advantage on each stride, it was like that clicked. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to take a lot of practice. I'm going to have to think about this every game. It was like somebody flicked a light switch, and all of a sudden I could get so much more power out of every stride.
And it's something you don't have to think about anymore or worry about. It's just like, hey, I'm like, I don't have to struggle skating. I'm in position, and then, gives you best shot to make the right call.
Yeah, it's one of those muscle memory things that once you figure that stride out, once you figure how, maximum flexion, maximum stride, extension, recovery, it's out of your head. Because I remember back when, because I came up in the 1 and 2, and we were doing East Coast League games 1 and 2, and if you thought about your skating, you were screwed because you had 9,000 other things, right? So once you got that down, you were in that flow, and you never had to worry about that. And that's one thing that a lot of guys don't realize. Like that's what you're supposed to work on every summer.
Right.
Work on that skating.
The 3-minute drill, the sprint, glide sprint. Like I used to always do that in the summertime. I would go 5 on, 5 off, where me and you work in a 2-man game, and you drop all the pucks for the first 5 minutes, and I skate the game like a 3-man referee. Nobody knows the difference. We're out there in the 2-man system skating. I'm getting a workout in, learning the stride, learning that hey, when to hold back, when to go, when to really accelerate, when not to. Skate through the neutral zone. You don't want to glide through it. All that kind of stuff, right? Because you want that momentum coming in, and you just get that stuff in the off season. And like, if you don't work in your craft, like when you come to the season, you're working. You're trying to practice in a game to work in your stride when you should have been practicing in the summertime in a game that doesn't fucking mean nothing.
Right.
So like stuff like that always friggin' helped me like coming up.
Now, one thing that we've all had the opportunity to do is travel, right? Because of hockey. And you did your fair share of traveling with all the different leagues you worked.
Yeah.
Because you worked some of the leagues we worked. The USHL, East Coast League. I never worked the Southern Pro. It wasn't really a thing back then. Central League, I think, kind of morphed into it at some point, didn't it? Because it wasn't even a thing when I was in the East Coast League. Southern Pro wasn't there.
I think like a lot of the East Coast League teams that kind of like went away.
Yeah.
They all kind of formed some, like a 6-team league, and then it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah.
So,
But either way,
yeah,
we digress.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the North American League. They spanned a lot of North America. I've probably been to Alaska like 6 times just for the North American League. The Asia League, that was a fun trip. I got to go to Japan and Russia.
Wow.
That was the Asia League. They would take USA Hockey officials and send them over there because the officiating is so corrupt over there.
Paul Stewart talked about that.
He did, yeah.
That's why Paul got brought over for the KHL.
Yep.
And there'd be each team for the most part would have 2 or 3 North American guys that you could talk to, and when we'd show up, they'd be like, "Oh, thank God you guys are here." Like they don't know the difference between a big hit and a dirty hit or a clean hit. And these North American guys, a lot of them played a good amount in the American League, would light up some of these guys. Huge neutral zone hits that are just great hits, but they hold back during the season because any big hit they'd call them. Now it's kind of fair game, and it would be a wake-up call for a lot of these other teams, yeah.
That's really cool. How many countries over there did you get to?
I only got to go to Japan and Russia. This was just for I did the quarterfinals and semifinals. And so I had a chance to go to Seoul, Korea, if it wasn't a sweep, but it was. So instead of that, we went and spent, I think, 5 days in Tokyo with just nothing to do.
That must have sucked. 5 off days in a city? Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
in Tokyo.
I had 2 in a row, one stretch in the playoffs in the American League, and that was a disaster.
Well, so the flight from, because I spent about a week in Sapporo area, then flew to Russia for a week, a week, and then flew back to Tokyo, and they lost my bag on the Russian flight. And the airport, I was in Sakhalin, Russia, which is
where is that?
It's a little island above Japan, but it's part of Russia.
Okay.
And we go to the airport, and I felt like I was in like a post office. Like it did not feel like an airport. They're just taking money from me for checking these bags, and then my bag doesn't show up. And now I'm in the Tokyo airport trying to just find anybody that can speak English to be like, hey, my bag's not here. What do I do now? It took me about an hour and a half, and they just sent it straight to Chicago, which where I was flying to. But I had my deodorant, all kinds of toiletries and clothing in there. I had another clothing bag, but a lot of good stuff. And
yeah, right.
So I got to go figure out in Japan, they didn't have sticks of deodorant that you could just roll. Everything was a spray. I'm trying to is this toothpaste?
Everything's a spray.
I'm having to ask, I don't know what this product is, and I want something to brush my teeth with, trying to figure things out like that. It all worked
Brushing
out
teeth
okay,
with
though.
glue.
No, on that island, was that where the games were in Russia, or was it on the mainland?
It was in that, it's a large island. It's not like some tiny little place.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were all there in Sakhalin, Russia. I do remember, I think it was the first game there. There was a play at the net. There was a goal, and we had video replay there. And the net was knocked off just prior to the puck going in. And I had the defensive team knocking the net off. We looked at video replay, and the defensive player got cross-checked. Not a penalty, but got pushed in. That's what knocked the net off. So the attacking player caused the net coming off, and I had to call this goal back. And our chaperone, who's also in the box with me, who's kind of this shady Russian guy, he's watching the clip with me and the other referee. The other referee was Sean Fernandez. I don't know if you all know him, but...
Yep. I know who he is. I don't know him too well, but...
So he and I are talking about the play. We're watching it, and I'm like, oh, man, yeah, that was knocked off by the attacking team. I think we're going to call this back. And our chaperone is there no, good goal, good goal. And I was like, no, see, he did push the defender into the net, so he's like, no, good goal, good goal. And I was like, okay. And I step out onto the ice, big washout, and the building's just dead silent. And it was so eerie and scary. I was expecting a boo, a whistle, something. Just silence.
That's eerie.
That's when you look for the muzzle of
Right,
the sniper rifle.
Yeah, right.
I was just like, oh, I'll get stabbed in the parking lot on the way out of here. But they ended up winning that game. They ended up, making up for that lost goal. So
Talk
I got
about,
out with my
Late
life.
penalties.
talk about pressure. I say good goal.
Right?
No, but it's really not a good goal.
And the game was over. He was nowhere to be found. He was supposed to give us our ride back to the hotel. We had to get the translator to take us back. And now I'm really nervous.
Yeah, he didn't like that call.
I think there was, apparently his daughter was sick or something like that, but I'm like, I don't know.
That's shady.
I don't know if I'm getting
nuts.
back in this guy's car. I did, but
Wow. Now, did you do games in Japan too?
Yep, we had some in Tamakamai, which is like 30 minutes outside of Sapporo.
Oh, wow. I never knew they'd.
Yeah, I knew they did
I mean,
that.
I knew
yeah.
they have hockey, but
No, but I knew that
mean-
the U.S. Yeah, when I was.
I never knew we sent guys over.
Yeah, when I was in the program, they sent guys over all the time. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, but I never got to go.
We got sent to the Western League,
Okay.
the Western Hockey League. The NHL sent 6 of us out there for the training camp, and then we took like 3. Vaughn Rohde. That's how I met Roach.
Oh, okay.
When he was the linesman that we stayed with out there. You know Vaughn?
I don't think I do.
Yeah, he probably was in the NHL by the time you were coming up because he spent 22 years as a linesman in the NHL.
Yep.
But that's how I met him. That's as far as we went though. We didn't get sent over.
That was one thing I wish I
overseas.
did was get my license and go overseas and like do those like tournaments and all that kind of stuff. Like
IHF stuff,
yeah, I never did that.
Yeah, I always wanted to do that too.
Yeah, I just didn't pull the trigger. Like I just never did it.
Well, there's certain people that were running USA Hockey weren't.
Yeah,
I
they don't
would've
like
sent
my
me
last
over
name.
there. I don't think they would have sent either of us over there.
No.
They might have sent us over, but they wouldn't have brought us back.
Right.
I think that would have been the problem. But
Yeah, I got my IHF license in 2019, and that was a rough time to get it because all the tournaments got canceled the next year
Right.
with COVID and all that.
Yeah, right.
And I kind of thought just bad timing. I kind of thought I was done with that. And I got to go to Bulgaria for the World Men's Division
just
2.
got back, right?
Yeah, in April. And that was a ton of
just
fun.
went?
Yeah, you just went.
Yeah, just
Oh,
in
no
April, yep.
kidding.
Mhm. That was a ton of fun, though. It was a 3-man tournament. There's only 4 referees. Everybody there was from Europe. I was the only guy from North America. But we really got close. I mean, it's only 11 of us, and we spent about 9 days together. And it was a really fun. It was probably the most fun I've had at a hockey tournament.
Bulgaria is pretty nice too.
Never been.
I've never been either, but I'm just saying. I heard. I saw it somewhere. It came up on a feed on one of the socials, and someone was in Bulgaria, and I was like, "That's Bulgaria." I was like, "What? Pfft, I didn't know that." Not that I'd go there, but it looked nice.
Maybe we'll do a podcast there.
Yeah, we were in Sofia. It's
the
one of
Bulgarian podcast. That'd be good.
Oh, I got some hockey guys there. I got some referee guys there that would, they'd love to
right.
be on something like this.
All
All
right.
right. I think I want to get that guy that
We'll
was
go
in the penalty
international.
box on. That's not good goal.
We got to go to Russia for that. I don't think we're going there now.
I don't think we're going there. No, that would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Now, what was your favorite league to work over the years?
Probably the Southern Pro League.
Yeah.
The ESPY.
I was there the 2016-17 season. I was there full time, and I was living in Columbus, Georgia. And I liked it. So it was a 10-team league at the time. And if you're, I was full time in that league. I think I had something like 72 games. Yeah. And I also did a handful of Hockey East games at Notre Dame during that time.
Oh, sick.
But that league, if you're doing a good job and you're communicating well with the coaches and the players,
Yes.
you get a couple months into the league, everybody knows you, and you kind of just do your thing, and nobody really bothers you all that much.
But you just said an important thing. Like you build rapport with these guys, right? And they trust you because why? You're doing a good job, or at least you're giving a good effort, and you can communicate. And I remember the first couple of times I went down there, I was coming from the USHL, so I was calling the friggin' standard. Like the standard was like a big thing, right? Hooks, holds, everything was getting called. Like you touch someone in the hands, you're calling it. And I started calling the standard down there, and you can call 150 of those. So, I remember Aaron Mills grabbing me. He's like, after the first period, one of my first games down there, he's like, just call the roughs and the body checks and, you'll figure it out. But you don't need to call all these hooks and holds. But
Yeah, that was really difficult back then.
Yeah.
Because, I was full time in that league, but I was also working the NCAA, which has the strictest standard, especially then.
right.
And I remember there was an email sent out because the Southern Pro League was underneath the USA Hockey Officiating Development Program at that time. There was email sent out that was talking about standards and what they expected out of you with the various leagues. Mm-hmm. And this one was directed towards USHL officials, but it said, okay, so let's look at our penalty standard. The strictest league in the United States right now is the NCAA. So we're going to put that at a 10. And let's say the standard for the Southern Pro League, we want that around a 4. But we want the USHL around an 8.5. And I'm thinking, man, I'm working the 10 and the 4.
That's a big jump. That's a big jump.
So I get out there in the Southern Pro League and nothing looks like a penalty. And then I go to NCAA and everything's a penalty. And going weekend to weekend,
that's
back and
tough.
forth, everything can't be automatic.
Right.
So, it's hard to just react when the standard varies so much, night to night. But I think I did an okay job of getting through it.
Well, you learn how to communicate. Like Luke Galvin always says, like if you can manage the building, manage the people, like you can manage a hockey game, right? Like we were talking on the ride up, like just asking guys questions or just being a little bit like humility, like, hey, what you see there? Like, or just having like that conversation with them instead of just like a back and forth FU match, right? Like you can actually have a conversation with pro guys. With kids, they just come at you and they don't really friggin' get it. They're like, ah. But a pro guy, they'll stop and talk to you and actually like, having a civilized conversation if you're reasonable and you're not fired up and all that kind of jazz.
I have to point out, so the three of us rode up together. And this was the first ride up that he didn't have like kind of a road rage incident. Because typically he goes off the handle and
I sat in the
loses
back.
his
It was
mind.
nice.
Yeah, you were in the back.
didn't see
That's
anything.
why.
Yeah.
No car fires, no nothing.
Yeah, there wasn't anything.
It was a nice, pleasant ride.
Yeah.
We'll see how the ride back goes.
We didn't have the dog looking over your shoulder.
Frankie Chirps is in here today. I found him a sitter so he wouldn't
Nice.
bother you tonight and wouldn't be barking at everyone. So, but I had to point that out because,
It's all good.
it's you. Was Jimmy Combs your boss?
He was, yeah.
He's the best.
Jimmy-
He
He's
was
the best.
He was kind of a comedy mentor for me because I was big
Yeah.
into it in the Southern
Yeah,
Pro
that's
League.
right.
I remember I was hanging out in Charlotte with him, and he took me to see Gilbert Godfrey
Oh, sick.
in Charlotte.
At the Comedy Zone?
Yep, at the Comedy
Yeah.
Zone. And I got to meet Gilbert Godfrey, before the meet and greet, where it was just kind of us. But I remember the opener there. He kept. Did you ever do stand up with him?
Gilbert? No, I never did.
No, not Gilbert. Jim Combs.
No. He came to a show up in New Hampshire. I did a couple of years back, and but I never actually worked with him because I didn't go down and work Charlotte. I actually did the Comedy Zone in Charleston one time. Robbie Concannon helped me hook that up.
Nice.
Along with Jimmy in coordinating, but I haven't worked a show with Jimmy, so.
Well, yeah, he did. He would help me out with some bits and things like that. And I do remember one of the worst one of the worst sets I ever had. I was in Nashville, and I was kind of going off of some advice that he gave me that didn't really fit my style, and I shit the bed so hard on this set. Where it was one of those where you're like, I can't get on. I can't get up for the next month, and I vowed to myself like, you're not deviating from your own. Like, you got to stay true to yourself. You're trying to be somebody else. I was taking some cues that didn't quite fit my personality.
Yep.
And yeah, I was like, I can't do that again. I gotta just do what works for me and just keep going with that.
But that's the biggest thing in comedy is you have to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to be someone you're not, then people see it. They're going to see it and it's going to wear off. Or if you try to be that character, very few people can pull off a character for a long set. You know, like 5 minutes, okay, but that whole long set, after a while, typically someone who's doing a character is kind of like, all right, you want to get to know who the person is. And matter of fact, I remember a long time ago, I went to a question and answer presentation thing at Emerson. A friend of mine brought me, and Dennis Leary was there. And he was, the presenter. And he said, you got to be, it stuck with me, you got to be who you are. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who's filthy, be filthy. If you're someone who's not, don't try to be filthy in whatever way. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And Don Gavin, who is one of my heroes, also said, he actually said, it'll take you 7 years to figure out who you're writing for. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Almost to the day I walked off stage and went, that's what he was talking about. But you got to be yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you try, like, I can help you punch up a bit or, give you a tagline, but you can't do your stuff like me, and I'm not going to do your stuff like you because it just won't work.
Same thing in officiating. Be yourself, right? Don't be, if you're comedic, you could be funny, right? But you can't use it all the time, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just be yourself.
That's why you swear so much.
Well, I can't help it.
Well, I do remember some of the last games you worked when we worked together.
I was a little angry.
Yeah, you were.
That's why I retired.
But
Gino, angry?
It worked good. We had like a good cop, bad cop
We
thing
did,
going
yeah.
on, and
I enjoyed working with you. Yeah.
I was, the voice of reason. Oh no, what happened there? No, where'd you get slashed? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And you're like, yeah, fuck you.
I want to swim. I didn't swim that much.
No,
Yeah,
they were looking for it. Wasn't. It
No,
was,
it was funny. Yeah.
It was
Now, was
needed.
that Hockey
Yeah.
East? That you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
worked
that
Oh
was
together?
yeah, it was
Hockey
Hockey
East,
East.
yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Don't tell Murph that though.
What's he gonna do? Fire you?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's kind of
Good
too late.
point.
What is it? The statute of limitations is gone.
Oh, yeah.
On that one. That's really cool though. Like I wish we had been able to work a higher level. Like we did games, we did youth games.
Just some, like, Division III
the
stuff.
little people games. We're live on the TikTok right now, I think, and we'll probably already get shut down. But that, because you said the M word, I just don't want to get shut down on that. I don't give
Yeah, I
a
don't
shit
blame
about
you.
the podcast. But I remember in the Quincy rink, we did a couple games, and we had a blast. I mean, and a couple of kids were trying to fuck with us, and it was like, wrong.
Yeah, wrong
pair.
two to mess with today.
But it would have been fun to work, higher level, and really, because I think we would have done well together. I think.
When it comes to like communication and all that, it's fun. Have you ever had a moment where you learn a new communication technique and you're like, wow,
Yes.
that's something you gotta. I haven't done this one since, but years ago, I was working in Vermont, and I was working with Terrence Murphy, and Kevin Snedden was the coach.
Okay.
There was a scrum at the net. Vermont's already down a man. I can't really see what happens on the other side of the scrum. I'm the high guy. Terrence Murphy's got an additional minor that's going to put him down 5-on-3. I didn't see what happened really, but I heard as Terrence is skating by talking to a player, he had something along the lines of, everything settled down, and then that guy popped him in the head, so he's got one. Like, okay, great. So I just kind of overhear part of this explanation. Snedden's not putting his line out. And like, we're ready for the face-off. And I blow my whistle, I do this, and I'm not benching him right now to stack penalties. So I'm going to go over, but I didn't see the play, so I can't talk about it too much.
Right.
He's got his hands on the dasher. I skate up. He's down from the bench, hands on the dasher. And I put my hands on the dasher. And I didn't mean to, but I kind of touch one of his, like I go on top of one of his hands, and he pulls it back really quickly. And I could tell he's like uncomfortable now. And all I said was, I said, we're not talking about this. Your player already got an explanation. I need you to put your line out right now. I turned away and skated away. I look over my shoulder, his line's coming out. He didn't say a word to me. And I'm like, all I need is like a little awkward touch. And it just diffuses the whole
Just
situation.
go over and hold the coach's hand,
Yeah.
and it'll be all over.
There was one time I got there was like a coach like right here, and I'm at the bench, and he was like, "What are you trying to get my face and try to kiss me or something?" I'm like, "What?" I go, "You're in my face. I'm just standing." I'm like, "You lead it off."
You can never pull back.
No.
It's like, I
Like,
got a
yeah, I'm
visor.
like, I'm
that's
just
my
like, yeah,
goal.
right.
You want to bump my visor? That's fine, but
Yeah.
I'm not moving.
Right. No. I love when they did step up on the dasher, like one foot, and lean in, so they're right there. And I always used to go, you know what? Are those Italian loafers? Because those things are fantastic. And I just complimented their shoes, and they'd be immediately like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then I'd be like, "What did you want again?"
Right.
And they'd be like, "Get the fuck away from me."
Right.
And that was it. It's like that. Those little tricks.
Well, I mean, I worked the NCHC, which is in the Midwest. Well, I mean, worked the Midwest all over the friggin' place, but specifically that league, and they had us mic'd up, and they were like, "Oh boy, no one's gonna understand Bender with that Boston accent." Yeah, not Dakota, 2 minutes for slashing. Dan Dreger used to do a great explanation at camp. Good imitation on me. It was pretty funny.
But you were mic'd. Oh,
Yeah, you were
for
mic'd
the
up,
whole
so every
thing.
time, yeah. So when every penalty, I had to, announce over the thing, and they were like, "Well, Binder's going to need a translator."
Were you ever mic'd up like you've been mic'd up?
Oh, the Southern Pro League, I was
for
mic'd
like video, not just mic'd up to
Yes.
give the penalties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Have you ever been mic'd up?
Yeah, the USHL mic'd me up probably back in like 2014, 2015 in Chicago, and they would use what I would say like at training camp of like, "Hey, listen to how these situations are diffused." And
Right.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that is good.
I remember it was a great time for me to be mic'd up because there was a weird situation where the coach of, I'm trying to think of who they were playing. It was the Capitals, Madison. And they were in Chicago, and it was like 45 seconds left in the game. There was a high stick on the puck, and we had to face off all the way down. And it was in the defensive zone of Madison, and they wanted to keep a player on the bench. So they had 4 guys on the ice. As soon as the puck went down, they wanted to throw a guy on the ice. And you can't let that happen.
No.
So I went over there and, told, hey, look, we need your 5th guy on the ice. He goes, no, I'm keeping him right here. There's nothing in the rule book that says I have to have 5 guys. I said, yes, there is. You have to have the correct amount of players on the ice to drop the puck.
Miracle straight.
And I need him out right now. He's like, no, not doing it. 45 seconds left, late in the season of a 1-goal game. I'm not giving you a bench right now. And so I'm like, look, we need this guy on the ice or we're not resuming plays. Like, I'm not doing it. I go, all right, well, we're going to go line up and we're not dropping the puck till he's out there. Just skated away and he threw the guy out on the ice. Then at the end of the handshake, he's yelling at me about it. Right. There's nothing in the book that says I can't do that. And I'm like, the game's over. And there is something clearly in the book.
Yeah.
But when I skated away, I had the mic on and I said something like, now I'm not speaking directly to him, so I'm like, I'm fired up. I'm not going to say to him, like, yeah, it's right in the fucking book. I'm going to screenshot this. I'm going to send it to Scott Zelkin and be like, forward this to the Capitals and tell them that Holton's fucking right. And they would always keep that in the clip that they'd show at camp. Like, they just let it run to that point. But yeah, that was a cool thing to have them use that as kind of a training tool. Because there's all kinds of little instances in the game that I don't really think about that much.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see it.
That's a brilliant idea.
That is.
To use that, as long as you pick the right person.
Right.
I thought you were going to say we dropped the puck and immediately blew the whistle and gave him a penalty for not, you couldn't give him too many men on the ice. That's what I was thinking in my head, but not enough men.
It would have been a delay game.
Delay a game. Because they do that in the summertime. They try to pull that shit all the time. Where, like, if you're not paying attention, they'll hold a guy on the bench. And next thing you know, he's on a breakaway. You go, where the fuck did that guy come from? That's when you got to be paying attention. But
have you had this in a summer game or any game, like when they're pissed off at you and then like all 5 players don't move? Like they dropped the puck and one team didn't move. They all stood in their position. This was in the Chowder Cup. I was with Todd Whittemore, Ned Bunyan.
Todd
the Bod,
yeah, Todd the Bod. Ned Bunyan, God rest his soul, Ned Bunyan was still working. We had the orange fucking floaties on.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, 2-man system with the floaties. And it was like one of those like quarterfinal, semifinal games. It was a Sunday. Everybody's fucking sick of hockey, right? You did like 17 to 20 games in a weekend. I'm out there with Todd. And it was an absolute disaster of a game. And so, like, Todd's throwing fucking parents out. He's just picking guys. He's like, God, gone. He's gone. And I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 at the time. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And then next thing you know, the whole Canadian team, they dropped the puck. The goalie got out of the net. And the other team went down and fucking scored. And they didn't move. And I was like, what the hell? And Todd just went and dropped the puck again. They did it again. I'm like, what the fuck? And I was like,
they just stood there.
Yeah. And then Ned Bunyan opens the door, was like, hey, run the time. We're not fucking doing this. So I was like, okay, run that time. Let's go. Because
what do you do?
Yeah.
You can't make a move.
No, they just made a mockery of the game, and they made just like, yeah. And then it was just a bunch of FU back and forth. And yeah, that was, I was young. So I just kind of let Todd take the lead there. And I got into it with a couple guys, but I think that was something. I never had that happen again, but that was interesting.
I got to point this out. It's hilarious because anytime Todd Whittemore's name comes up, immediately, the both of us, what do we do? Todd the Bod.
Todd the Bod.
You can't say his name.
No, you can't.
I had some great games in the ECAC with him and his brother, Scott.
Oh,
they used to be great to line with. They were, top notch. Top notch.
Like, talk about having fun, right? Like, those guys did it right. They had fun. They always, Scott always had a cooler of beer with them. And
yeah. So, who was we mentioned holding hands with a coach. Who was your favorite coach to kind of deal with over the years? And who was the one that you'd punch him in the throat if he walked into the studio?
I don't know if I'm going to say mine.
Theoretically punch in the throat, not literally.
I don't know. I feel like I don't have too many coaches that are enemies.
And not necessarily not a bad guy.
Like, you just can't
not
stand
saying
him.
that there's a bad, not that the coach is a bad guy, but he's just a pain in the ass to deal with. You know what I mean? Not the guy that I'm sorry, not you don't dislike him personally, but professionally you can't freaking stand him.
One guy sticks out in my head a little bit. Did you all ever work Tony Critali?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was the Texas Tornado.
I got a story about that Texas Tornado team that used to come up to the Chowder Cup, but go ahead.
But yeah, he was always difficult
Yes.
to deal with. He said something in a game of mine that when the linesman told me about it afterwards, I didn't hear about it during the game. I had a I spit my water out of my mouth when he said it. Well, I was working in Topeka, Kansas, and pardon my language here, but for whatever reason he called the linesman a cum guzzler, which was ridiculous.
Right.
I thought it was hilarious after the fact.
Right.
I'm like, why didn't you? I would have
I was like,
definitely
why didn't you
benched
bench
him for
him?
that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what characteristics would lead him to believe that that's what he was.
But that's
right.
not like what.
Like if you're an asshole, yeah, you're being an asshole. Like, oh, you're being a dick, you're being a dick.
Right.
You're being a cum guzzler. What were you?
Yeah, what act were you doing?
Yeah.
What were you doing to? Yeah.
He would always say weird gay
That
acts
is
like
weird
that.
thing. Like that's just. Like I mean, yeah. Like what would possess a like? Why go there? Why go there? Like that's a weird place to go.
Because
isn't it?
Well, I feel like these coaches sometimes they get so wrapped up in their own emotions and they just explode and they don't even they black out. They don't even know what the hell they're saying half the time, and then they come to, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I was got pissed off at whatever." But yeah, I don't get the personal getting personal with the fucking ref. I never understood that.
Who was your favorite coach to deal with?
Favorite coach to deal with.
The one that just got it. Like for me, John Marks.
I mean,
He got it.
He got it.
He got it.
Yep.
He
guys
was
get
one.
it.
I mean, at that level, there's a lot of guys that get it, but he was one of my favorites.
I do remember I liked Paul Baxter a lot. He was the coach for the Wichita Falls Wildcats.
Yeah.
And I don't. This just popped into my head. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I was working the Blaine Showcase years ago, and there was a 3-on-2 something. I'm busting to get down the ice, and I'm going full speed. Somebody jumps off the bench and clips me, and I go down hard and slide from the blue line all the way to the goal line, and the goalie's waiting with the puck for me to blow the whistle. And everybody's kind of looking at me oh, what the fuck? Looking at me and he was the only one that was Walker, are you okay? Take a second.
Right.
It happened right in front of his bench, and nobody else really seemed to care what happened to me except for him. And that kind of stuff
That's
sticks
pretty
with
cool,
you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that he did anything over the top.
Right.
He just was dude, you okay? Give it a
was
second.
human.
He's a
Catch your
human,
breath.
right, yeah.
To where I feel there should have been some players oh, dude, sorry about that. You all right, man? And,
Yeah.
that just sticks out in my head where when a guy's classy like that, he'd be hey, yeah, maybe there was a late whistle, but you got nailed,
Yeah. Now, you brought up, so the coach using that one, you have one of the funniest stories about, so back when I ref, pretty much anyone could say anything. Nothing was really off limits. I mean, a few words, but most of it was just let it rip. Who cares what people said? Now, of course, we've put the kibosh on that for, rightful reasons.
Right.
And the big one is the, homophobic slurs. They're that's one of those ones that has just been taken right out, as it should, right? But it's one of those things that, now, you have one of the funniest stories about a league trying to deal with that before the season.
Oh, no, this was mid-season.
And we're not, hold on. So before we get into this, we're not making fun of anyone. We're not justifying any name calling. We're not saying that any of this is okay. This is the league trying to figure out what was okay and what's not okay. I just want to give a disclaimer.
Yes.
So if someone comes in and they're like, what the fuck? This is hilarious because of I'll let you set the scene.
So when I was working in the USHL, a coach called a linesman the F word. And not the fuck word, the other F word.
Right.
And they gave him a bench minor penalty. And afterwards, the league asked, why didn't you throw him out of the game? And, this is probably 2014, 2015. It was a while back. And the crew was we didn't know we could do it for that. You know, like, because players back then would say it to each other all the time.
All
You
the
thought
time.
nothing
That's what I'm
about
saying.
it. Yeah.
That was nothing. All that was nothing. Like,
that
they
word
were
was
just
thrown out all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, the coach should be held to a higher standard, of course.
Right.
And it was directed to an official, which if a player directed that to an official, you would get a penalty as well. But,
Yep.
the league was, we want a more severe penalty than a minor.
Right.
So it just happened maybe about 2 weeks before our mid-season meeting, where all the referees would meet all the officials would meet in Chicago, and we'd have a meeting. And, the director of officials, everybody there, had a lengthy discussion about what words were game misconduct and what words weren't.
I wish I was in that meeting.
So, like, the ones the obvious ones, the F word, homo, things like that. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, but what about fairy? Like, nah, fairy's fine. Don't worry about fairy, And we're just throwing out words, but it's actually surprisingly pretty serious. Like,
Right.
not nobody. I mean, we were laughing a little bit, but once we were into it, we were all pretty serious about it. But like, oh, what about fudge packer? Like, oh, no, that's not a game misconduct. And then the one we really got stuck on was cocksucker. That was the one where we're like, okay, what are we doing for this one? Because that was thrown around a lot. Like, that was a pretty common phrase.
And it wasn't even like, I know back in my day, that wasn't even linked to actually like calling someone gay.
Yeah, it wasn't.
That was just kind of like just saying you're a fucking asshole. Like
Right.
that wasn't
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't. You didn't. If you were gonna rip someone or try to go at someone, for that, you didn't call him that.
Right.
You went with something else.
Right.
That one you just threw around like like you were saying, fuck you.
Right.
So I could see where that one was the enigma.
So we landed on, I remember we had this probably 10-minute discussion of the words we were going to have, and there's a secretary writing them all down because there was a formal memo that was sent out with all these things written in it, which was awesome.
And remember, we're not laughing at calling people these names.
And if anybody's-
we're not laughing at we're laughing at the ridiculousness of having a serious, like, board type meeting of the minds and going through each one that would be okay, not okay, 2-minute minor, game misconduct. Like, that's what we're making fun of here.
Right.
Just so we're clear. We're not making fun of the, to bring up, imagine if you were in a boardroom of like some Fortune 500 company. You're like, is fudge packer okay to call my coworker? Like, that would be fucking ridiculous.
Right.
Well,
You know
we
what
were
I mean?
so terrified that the next week, one of the kids was going to say one of those terms, like, oh, we didn't talk about that word. What do we do now?
Well, that's what it comes down to, right? Like, because we're
gotta go to
officials.
replay. We gotta call the
but we're
office.
officials, and we want to have all the information going in. Because if something comes up, because like hockey's a sport that you see something you never seen before, or you're like, now what? And you got to really, use common sense a lot of the times and go with that.
Now, did the players know about this meeting? I'm hoping
They certainly
didn't.
did after. I'm sure they got the same memo with the same 7 words in it that you couldn't say. I'm sure they got it at some point.
Because if one of those players, I would have made something up just to do what you just said. Let's see if let's see what happens if I say this.
Right.
Just to see your reaction.
Yeah.
What they should have did was call George Carlin in, and he would have really fucking set you straight.
He would have.
The 7, don't you? You can't say on television?
7 words you can't say on television.
Shit, piss,
Yeah.
fuck, cock, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. And tits doesn't even belong on the list. Oh, sorry. I used to listen to double CD with my father going to games.
I love it. No, that George Carlin to me
Oh, you're
was
the best.
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But that just shows the ridiculousness of how, I just find it a funny story because
Yeah.
I can just picture a board of directors basically sitting around a table discussing something so just bizarre.
But that was like you said, what, 13, 14 or 14, 15 around
Probably
there?
around the 14, 15, something like that.
So where we are now, 10 years later, it's totally friggin' changed. Even society has changed, where you can't even do that.
Well,
Never mind in an arena.
Yeah, I've over the years I watched a set of mine from Nick's Comedy Stop 20 years ago. I think it was actually more now. I think it was 2001. It was from 2000 or 2001, and I did a bit about I do a bit about the two-man luge, and I used to use a word that I don't use now on stage.
Right, you
And,
can't, right?
And I'm a believer in you should be able to say whatever you want, no matter what, as a comedian.
Right.
As a comedian,
Yes.
I should have, it's really the last line of free speech when you really think of it, right?
Right.
But, people go, oh, you can say whatever you want. No, you have to, if you want to work and you want to make money,
Right.
you got to make sure that you're doing, what you need to do. I'm not going to go, do a show with, an older crowd and do certain material that I might do with a bunch of 20-somethings. But at the same time, yeah, I should be able to say whatever words I want, but I got to know if I say certain words, certain places aren't going to work me.
Right.
So I watched this tape and I was like, wow. I forgot I used to say it that way. Well, I didn't forget because I changed the word I used to alternative. And, it actually made the joke funnier, to be honest, because it's a more clever word. But yeah, we've come, nowadays we got put in TikTok jail for midget. And we still call players midgets. That's the funny thing.
They technically changed it to what?
Well, they went
they
U16,
now it's
U18.
U16s, U18s, whatever the hell.
They still refer to it, and when we're talking about it, and it's like, people say, "What team are you?" Oh, I'm on a midget team. Like it's
So
it's just one of those things. And again, it wasn't. It wasn't meant to be derogative when we came up with the names, or whoever came up with the names. Pee Wee, Squirt, they all went with.
That's what it was. That's what it's called.
So
I've known that my whole life, and now I can't use them.
Yeah,
Right.
Well,
So
it's like
So like my father, how he is, he's just matter of fact, right? Like he's not whatever. And we have a women's tournament, like a women's tournament, like women hockey. Now, he sent an email out to a bunch of administrators, and one of the females wrote back, well, we refer to women's hockey as adult hockey. Blah, 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 blah. You got to use the terms U8 and U12 and blah, 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 blah. And my father's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, isn't it just, like, you know what I meant? Like, what do we, like, why do it's just a quick email. Like, I got 1,000 things going off. I have 300 emails I'm flying out. Like, I get it. Like, but, the girl knew what he was saying, but, like, you got to fucking correct him. You know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Well, the pendulum has swung too far. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I was confused at what you said. It's like, no, you weren't.
Well, it's like that. The school committee that fired the guy. They hired a new superintendent. This was in Northampton, I think.
Okay.
2 years ago, they hired a guy to be the superintendent, and so they hire him, and he sends an email. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Blah 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 blah. And the women on the school committee got offended by the word "ladies," and said it was a microaggression, and they fired him. This is a true story. This is not a comedic bit.
Right.
It's a true story, and sure enough, they fired him, and it was like, and then the next person they hired turned down the job because of it. They were like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Right.
And I always joke and say they didn't, bring up the second email he sent. The news didn't tell you about that one, in which he said, I want to apologize for calling you ladies. I should have went with cunts. And that was, they didn't talk about that one. But no. Now, our Ireland and European and Australian listeners will have no problem with what I just said.
Right.
I'm sure we might get some comments and letters from this country.
But
it's
letters?
just a word. Well, I hope not. I love the comments. Good, bad, or indifferent. Comment away. Man. Like and subscribe, too, if you haven't.
We're canceled.
We might beep that one out. Anyway.
Anywho.
All right, because we always talk about guys we refereed as players that at the time they weren't who they were, right? And some of them you knew who they were going to be, but who was probably the most talented person you saw kind of at a young age where you were like, this guy's going to be good?
Guys that come to mind, Cale Makar for sure.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
But maybe Trevor Zegras. Because I feel like when I started working Makar, he was already
established.
He was doing,
you knew who he was.
I first saw Trevor Zegras I was at Elite Camp where they have that junior festival.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's almost like teams are getting ready for the World Juniors, the summer tournament. And I remember he was playing for Team USA. He definitely had a mouth on him back then, to the point where I think they had to tell him to settle down. Like,
really?
Yeah, the first couple of games, he was really all over the rest of the linesmen, to the point where I think John Van Beesbroek, who was the general manager, had to be like, hey, like,
Zip.
don't talk to the referees anymore. Like, don't think we won't send you home, because we will.
Right.
Because I remember being there, and he was a problem for the first couple of games. In the third game, silence, and we're like, oh, I wonder what happened there. Like, no, they talked to him. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, because you don't want to, in one of those kind of things, like the showcase like that, the last thing you want to do is dime a kid.
Well, weird how that happens when the coach disciplines the kid, right? It's all about coaching, right? Like, if the coach allows it, it's going to continue. But if the coach manages it, it can stop. And that's why you got to have a good rapport with the coach and a back and forth, and then they can communicate that to their players, and the players react to it. And if they don't, they're going to suffer the consequences, right?
It's amazing how that works, huh?
Yeah.
Coaches keeping control of their players.
Right.
Fascinating. But you knew he was an elite talent.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell right then,
Yeah.
that he was going to be a superstar. But you want to see the guys that, like I talked about Cale Makar. I remember him screaming at a linesman one night, and he might have been right. He wasn't a guy to fly off the handle.
Nope.
And I remember he looked at the linesman and said, "You need glasses," and he took his hand. He did like a glasses thing.
Oh, jeez.
And I was right in front of the Amherst bench, and I started yelling at him a bit, and then just he was probably the best player in the conference, maybe
He
the
was
best
phenomenal.
player in the NCAA.
Yeah.
See, he was.
Like, I really don't want to give a kid a 10-minute misconduct, especially there's when he was playing, people are coming out to the games to see him. I don't want to give him 10 minutes.
Right.
And I just said to him, Greg Carvel, I was yelling at him right in front of the bench, and Greg Carvel was like, "Whoa,
Greg's the best.
Yeah,
I love Greg.
He's awesome, yeah. But he jumped down, and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on, Walker? What's going on?" I said, "Look, I understand we all get hot, and I understand he's going to yell, but I can't deal with those hand gestures for wearing glasses." He's like, "I'll talk to him." I'm like, "It's all good. We just can't have it again, And when we came out for the next period, Cale came right up to me. "Hey, man, I'm sorry about that," and just, "Hey, man, it's fine. Just can't have the gestures."
He probably thanked you for not diming him.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. I mean, well, like I said, if you're a referee that's always yelling and always, combative with players, they kind of tune it out.
Yes.
But I know that, Greg's going to see me yell like that, doesn't see that happen very often, and go, whoa, 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 what's going on? You don't
Right.
act like this all the time. And that's when, that was a time where I thought it was appropriate, where I might have to raise my voice and lay down the law a little bit,
Yeah,
I'll tell you, the best guy I ever worked with that was the best at that was Terry Kohaski, right? Like, he was this all the time, and then if he got that foot up and he started yelling, everybody backed off. It was like incredible. There was like one night in like Hartford, it was like a Wednesday night, and we had 3 penalties the whole game. But all the penalties happened in the first 3 minutes of the hockey game. So Coho ripped one, I ripped one off, and then like the next one, someone gave him some shit, and he went by the bench, and I'm the high guy doing the line change, like, "Hey boys, Coho's pissed off tonight. Let's all relax." I go, "Dude, he's in a pissed off mood. Don't you guys start," right? And I egged it on. We didn't have another fucking penalty the rest of the game. Because, like, they just fucking knew that if you're going to mess with him, you're going to sit for 10. It's going to be a long night for them, not for him. He's just going to do his job. Like, if it's a night I got to run guys, I'm going to fucking run you. If you want to play hockey, I'll let you play. But you guys dictate the terms, not me. Like, I'll go off of what you guys want to do. If you want to play, I'll let you play. If you want to be dickheads, I'm going to run you. And he was the best at it. Like, when to turn it on and when to just let it roll.
Yeah. I think that's applicable in a lot of different careers. I mean, like teaching. Right? You can't be constantly yelling at kids.
Right.
Because they're going to turn you off. Even being a parent. If you're constantly yelling, it's not going to work.
Right.
Because the kid's finally going to be like, all right, like that's, it's something like that kind of everywhere.
Exactly.
I got to say, one of the things, you bring up Zegras, all I can think about, 2 plays, 2 goals that he scored. The one where he flipped it over the net.
That was sick.
And someone whacked it in.
Yeah.
Right? But he brought the Michigan to the NHL. Like the goal he scored this past year, like
Filthy.
and he does it. It was like boom, in the net, and you're like, what the hell? And then what I love was Bedard. Not too long after, Zegras did it to who were they playing at the time? Oh, Seattle. He did it to Seattle, and then Bedard does it to the Blues, and it's like that. Freaking like the talent level is just insane, absolutely insane.
I saw the reverse one, and it was UNH Merrimack, and the kid from Merrimack had the puck behind the net, and he acted like he was going to do it. Another kid skated by, and he had the right, and they all thought it was on his stick. It was on the kid coming around. And he tucked it in. And I was on the goal line. I went, holy shit, that's a reverse Michigan. I didn't even know how that happened. Like the goalie was like with the kid trying to, and like someone like hit him,
yeah.
And then the other kid tucks it in. I was on the goal line. I was like, holy shit. Well, I went viral. I was all over Twitter.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
The reverse Michigan. There's a video going around now. It's like a youth game, and the kid does it, and as he comes around the corner, he just gets bundled. I mean, just smoked.
That's how you stop the Michigan.
And what's great is it's the one of the times where the kid gets smoked and you're like, don't put your arm up. Like It was a clean hit, but it was like by USA hockey standards, it was a penalty.
Right.
Because he smoked the kid. But it's like, hey, it's like schoolyard. Like the kid who did the fancy move and playing hoops or something always got his ass kicked.
Yeah, that kid always got slashed or whatever, right? Like you're gonna do that, you're gonna pay the price.
As
showboating, right?
As he should, right?
Right.
So
I've heard talk that they might make it illegal in the NHL. Have you guys heard anything about that?
I heard that they were talking about that, making the Michigan illegal. And
Well,
I mean,
you can't college hockey now. You can't carry the puck above your shoulders. So it's
but
they
that
changed
play
the rule,
you could still do if you're like tall enough and you're not going over the crossbar. Right. That was the biggest thing. Is if like you have to keep it under the crossbar, but even your shoulders, you can still do it.
Right.
Did they just change that?
Yeah, it's shoulders. It's on 4 feet. Yeah, that's there's a lot of rule changes. I had a meeting today with the NCAA, or like they just kind of finalized them all. So the video should be done in a couple of weeks and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of rule changes.
Did they change the replay? Like, oh no, they already changed.
No,
that.
no replay change. No real replay changes. No.
I think we're in a good spot with replay.
I think so
for
too.
the NCAA.
I think we're in a great spot. Murph, thanks to Murph.
Oh yeah, there were some big problems with it years ago.
Yep.
When the referees could get in the box at any time, there was a lot of so it used to be you got one challenge if you had a timeout, and if you didn't have a timeout, you couldn't challenge. It wasn't even an option. So now, if you have a referee that doesn't, you just put a little bit of doubt into their mind about a play, and they're not able to challenge. Now the referee has to get in on their own, and they're so worried about making a mistake. Now it's, hey man, if I screwed it up,
Challenge.
you got an opportunity to do it right now, no matter what. It'll cost you a minor if you're wrong, and I would just slow down the game so much.
Right.
I remember a goalie yelling at me about in the crease and made me doubt myself. When I go look at the video, there's nobody within 3 feet of the crease.
Yeah.
For, probably 10, 15 seconds before the puck goes in. And I was working the same two teams the next night, and I went up to that goalie, and I said, you got me on that one last night. I promise you it's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
Because somebody puts a little bit of doubt in your mind because they're yelling about something, and you have the option to go look at it, and you're like, that seemed like a routine goal, but maybe I'm missing something. And you end up going and taking a look. No, I'm trusting myself. And if you got a problem...
Yeah, isn't that really like, because we've talked about replay a lot. Isn't that kind of the detriment of replay? Is that it's kind of gives the referees a crutch.
Yep.
Because they know I can always look at this, but like you just said, you get that ounce of doubt in your head. Like refereeing to me, when you get good, it's all instinct, right? It's just your gut tells you that, that was a goal. Or, no, that did not look right, no goal. And once you lose that and you start second guessing because someone says something or go look at it or this and that, that's when you're screwed as a ref. Because when you start questioning yourself, and I think that's where the kind of the drawback of replay is because it's, it happened to you. And you're not someone that's, you're a freaking top-notch official. and it could, you know what I mean? So it's because I came up in a time where the replay
Live
was
with
a
the call,
VHS with one camera angle up the top, you know, and you were lucky you could tell that it was you out there skating, you know.
I think this year in college hockey we're going to have a little bit of hard time with the head contact and the hit from behinds, because now you have that minor penalty option, right? So head contact, there's no major option only. It's only minor, major game, major DQ, and then hit from behind, I think you have them all. And now it's just like, remember like USA Hockey, you had the 2, 2 and 10, the 4 in game ejection, and then 5 game misconduct. That was the USA Hockey junior rules. So you had all those options. So like the same hit could be judged as a 4 in game or a 2 and 10. So like, what the fuck's the difference there? You had 4 options for a hit from behind.
I thought back then with that old junior rule book, I knew it like the back of my hand when it had all those options. And I felt like the officiating development program did a really good job of identifying when each one should be called.
Right.
They were very clear about that. And I think sometimes it's easy when you have a staff like the USHL where it's just maybe 20 referees or so.
Yeah.
It's easy with Hockey East too because we have a small crew, but you have to broaden it to the entire NCAA.
Right.
But you know, when you have a small crew, I think you can keep that consistency. But I remember when they had the minor, they would say if that was a hit from behind, either open ice or you're pancaked against the boards.
Right.
So you're not going in like head first or anything. So they had the 2-minute minor. Then they had a 4 and an ejection, and that was for somebody going in. Let's say it was just kind of a hockey play gone wrong, but he went into the boards pretty violently.
Right.
That would be for that. And then the 5-minute major and game misconduct would be intent to
everybody
injure.
knew, yeah.
Guy goes in
Everybody
head
has.
first for, you know. So there was, I think it was just, the 2 and 10 was on there too. 2 and 10 was for if you got hit from the back. But maybe you kind of caught yourself on the wall, but you had a little bit of distance that you traveled.
Right.
But yeah, so that was, actually, there was no minor option. It was 2-10. That's what it was, yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. But yeah, that was, they were very clear about what deserved what. And it made it easy, I think, as a referee.
And that's what we've been doing on the calls with all the supervisors is we're trying to, come up with all these clips. Like, guy turns at last minute, that would have been a normal freaking body check. And now we're throwing the kid out of the game for it, right? And then it's the onus is still on the guy delivering the hit, but it's also like if I see you coming, I'm going to turn, and now I get pancaked, and now it's a major penalty. Like that's tough.
So so now you have just a 2-minute option for a check from behind.
Yes,
and then 5 standalone, 5 in a game, 5 in DQ. Now wasn't that the way it was last year?
No, you didn't have a minor option. You had the major
option.
Yeah,
that's right. You had to go 5. Because those open ice hits.
Well, I guess when I can go
like the D guy steps up on the winger coming into the zone and hits him from behind, but doesn't smoke him, but it's a hit from behind. You need that 2-minute option because there is a 2-minute check from behind. I mean, there really is. And if you have to go 5 all the time, that's when guys start getting creative and that's when I think, problems can start. Because if you're calling something a rough, clearly not a rough, right? But you don't want to, you got to kind of manipulate the rule book when you shouldn't have to, you know?
I do remember when I was working in the Southern Pro League and I called the 5-minute major game misconduct for hitting from behind. Nobody had a problem with it. They're like, yeah, that's the right call. And I talked to the league later, and they said, next time let's label that boarding. And same thing with head contact. If you guy hit a guy in the head, 5-minute major game misconduct, sounds great. Let's label it elbowing though instead.
Right.
And I found out it was like a way for them to be like, oh, we've really cleaned up the league. I mean, look at this here. We're down 93% down on hits to the head. We've only had 3 majors for checking from behind. This league's really cleaned up. Like, no, we've just had 130 majors for boarding that have replaced those. But, whatever you got to do to make the league look good.
Yeah, well, pretty much every league does that.
Yeah.
I would think, right?
Absolutely.
So that's it. I can't wait to hear all the changes.
Oh, it's going to be...
And that call's going to be forever.
Well, we already did it. Like it was like over a year project, like with the rule change year. Like we had meetings once a month, and then they did a great job with it actually. And it was good to go through that process.
Are we bringing back the stick gauge?
It's in there.
I haven't seen a stick gauge in years.
It's stick measurements, yeah.
Well, no, I know the stick measurement. No one has a stick gauge.
I don't have one.
I don't have one. Every rink used to have one, though, and it was required that the penalty box has one.
That was the shady stuff I used to learn in the development program.
Yeah.
One of them was if you ever get a stick measurement and there's 2 stick gauges in the box, make sure you use the right one. So they would tell us if there's a H and a V for home and visitor, be like, give me the home stick. Because they would file down certain parts of it and the stick would be illegal more often.
No shit.
So like, if they have 2 stick gauges and they're labeled in any way, try to get the one that they're used for the home team.
Did you ever have this? Like, well, I had this in the playoffs, but it wasn't my game. I just had left town. But the team equipment guy went in the night before, measured all the sticks, and found one that was illegal. And they this was in the East Coast League, Elmira.
Wow.
Martinson.
Yeah, you know that was
Steve
the first
Martinson,
time that happened.
Really neat guy, that guy.
Yep.
Saw him yell at a fucking Zamboni driver once, a goal judge coming off because he screwed him the year before. And I'm like, how'd the goal judge screw you? He's like, he counted that goal. I remember arguing in the hallway. But yeah, so anyway, that equipment guy went in and measured all the sticks, and he called it out, and then that guy got, I don't know, in trouble or whatever, but a scumbag move.
I've told my stick measurement story before.
When you burned it.
Well, because Ted Sater, who, longtime coach of the Buffalo Sabres, was coaching the New Orleans Brass, and they were playing Birmingham. Dennis DeRozier, who coached Birmingham, him and I not fans of each other. And it was a 1-goal game, third period, and he calls for a stick measurement. And he knows the kid's stick's illegal, right? So we go over, and the stick gauge, the sliding thing was upside down. So it was broken, basically. Like, they probably broke off, and they put it on wrong. So I'm trying to measure the thing, and I'm going, fuck, this thing's broke. And Johnny O'Brien, my linesman, get a new one. Don't use this one. And I'm like, fuck it. DeRozier's a dick. Fucking Sater's a good guy. Put that guy in the box. 2 minutes, illegal stick. And of course, what happens?
Don't ref with emotion.
They score. Right? Now it's tied up, go to overtime, New Orleans wins. Now, we go in the locker room, and back the year before, you were supposed to take the blade out, this was back when the blades, and send it into the office. So I take, the trainer's in there taking the blade out, and he's like, I don't know how you measure shut the fuck up and just take the blade out, right? You're the one that gave me a broken stick gauge, right? So Andy, Van Hellemond calls, and I got fined $100 because he said I should have got a new one. He actually talked to Johnny first, and Johnny told him, I told him to get a new stick gauge. And then he called me, and he said, what did O'Brien say to do? I go, he told me to get a new stick gauge. And he goes, all right, you told the truth, but you still fined $100. And so I sent the thing in, but we brought it back to Raleigh. And I held it over the stove for like 20 minutes, and I bent that thing. It was like a banana hook, and I sent it into the office. And he got it. He goes, so this is how it looked, huh? I go, I don't know. I didn't do anything with it.
Oh, that's funny.
But, the stick gauges, I want them to come back.
But how are you supposed to get
I really don't want to come. I don't want them to come back. I'm just joking.
What do you mean get a new stick gauge? Like, you're lucky if the rink has one, I feel like.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Well,
where's the backup?
Yeah, well, obviously that was the one they had, and it was messed up. So, I mean, short of grabbing a nickel out of my pocket.
That's what I was going to say.
Wasn't there was it a quarter? Yeah.
I think it was a quarter. A quarter could go under.
Yeah.
And you'd hold it against the glass. That's how we used to do it before we had stick gauges. Right? Seriously, I remember doing that in tournaments in the summer.
Right.
Only assholes asked for it. Oh, but you'd always have it was like lacrosse. You always had a coin to flip at the beginning.
Right.
You always had to have a coin to check a stick because no one had a stick gauge. So
I've never had a stick measurement before, but I've had a goalkeeper's pad measurement before.
No shit.
Yeah, in a junior game years ago. I think it was like the Central States League or something like that.
Jesus.
And I didn't know what, you had to wait till the end of the period. And I remember, the person that wanted it was the goaltender coach of the other team. So he's, telling me all this stuff, the thigh protectors are, closing his 5-hole. And so I went up to, I took a look at everything. I go, hey, just tighten those up, I guess. I don't think it's giving you an advantage, but can you tighten that thigh pad up, whatever?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of awkward, actually. Talking to a kid, an 18-year-old, can you tighten up those thighs?
And this is happening in the hallway away from the team, and he's like in the butterfly, and I'm like looking between his legs at his crotch, like, crotch looks great, man. I think your crotch looks really nice. We could just tighten up those thighs a little bit.
Coach wants to measure it. I'm thinking it looks good.
I measured his crotch. It looked great.
You know?
Yeah, it was a great
Not
size
quite
crotch.
a French pole vaulter, but it's still pretty good. So did you had to measure the pads?
I did it because it's supposed to be done between periods. You don't do it during the game. I knew that part of the rule because that's a very rare thing.
Right.
So yeah, I did. I mean, there wasn't really anything
you had a tape measure?
I probably had a tape measure in my bag, but there was nothing to really measure. He was saying like his 5-hole was getting closed by some.
Right. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't really like because remember when they switched the pads from 12 inches to 11? This wasn't that far away from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is maybe 2010, I think. So I was like, yeah, he's going to play. And then that coach keeps like, no, we can't do it. And I'm like, okay, let's look right now. What are you talking about? Like, I don't see any extra piece of equipment that's closing his 5-hole.
Right.
I'm not a goaltender. I don't know that much about pads, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty. I know about those cheater blades they can put on them where they can push side to side without using their skates. I know stuff like that that's dangerous, but didn't look like an advantage to me. So I let it ride.
Well, I need an advantage for my daughter. She's a goalie, so any die pads for Dylan.
14-inch pads.
Yes.
That's what we put on her.
Yep.
And if anyone asks for a measurement, they get punched in the throat.
Absolutely.
Simple.
Right?
Right?
Sounds good to me.
In lacrosse, we used to have to carry a
you
tape
said
measure.
tape measure, yeah.
Because we used to have the
You have to
length
do
of
it randomly. Every whistle, like every timeout or every time they went to
Wow.
the bench, we just,
were so-
and then a quarter,
No,
they
end
grab
of
the stick.
quarter,
Yeah.
We used to grab a stick from each team.
Yep.
And would measure the basket, whatever they call it. I reffed it for like
Pocket?
12 years, but I don't know what it's
Yeah,
called.
the pocket, yeah.
We'd measure the width.
Like the ball
Then
couldn't-
you'd measure the depth. You'd put a ball in, and if you could see the whole ball underneath the
Yeah, it was illegal, right.
the rail, then it was illegal, and you had to measure it. And you grab someone random and measured them, and if they were good, they were good, and if they weren't, the stick came out of the game, and the guy got locked in for I think it was 3 minutes.
It's 3-minute
I think it's
lock in,
3
yeah.
minute lock in.
Yep.
And you never grabbed the defenseman's stick.
And this is the signal. Locked in,
Yeah,
right?
locked in.
It's hilarious.
You played, so
I
you
played,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
You reffed me a couple times.
I did, and I don't think you ever got a penalty.
No, I don't think so.
I played in high school, and I remember if it was wet out, if it was raining, everybody's stick was illegal.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
Well, you always you'd scout out who it was, and then you always wanted to pick some kid that you didn't have to call a legal stick on, unless a kid was being a dick.
Right.
And you were like, all right, 10, I'm measuring your stick, and guess what? When I put that ball in, I'm pushing that motherfucker down as hard as I can, and go, oh look, deep pocket. Sorry, 3 minutes.
But you can't tell them that because you could easily adjust your stick to shorten that pocket. Like you got 30 seconds on the sideline.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
but
Oh,
that's the, no, but that's
Yeah,
the
I'm
thing.
pulling it every
As they're
time, yeah.
running off the field,
I'm pulling my strings, yeah.
you just go 10, give me your stick, or whatever. 14, give me your stick. And so it's like they could do it as they know the quarter's ending, but that's some devious shit by
Yeah.
a high school kid. If they know to do that, then you know the stick's illegal. You know, but that was one of the weird things that lacrosse you had to do is grab
like
sticks.
you played, so like even when you had the big pocket, like you don't want a big pocket because sometimes you can't get it out of your stick. So like
Yeah,
you
it
don't
ruins
like
the release
Yeah, you
sometimes,
really
yeah.
don't want it that deep.
Yeah.
So
Well, before the game, we used to. Technically, I think we were supposed to measure everyone's stick, but what we
no,
did,
you had to. No, we can come up and get an
Yes.
offer. Like we can.
Yes,
Hey, can
we
you
had to be
measure my stick?
available.
Make sure this is good.
you had to be available,
Right.
to measure it,
Right.
And you know, it was awkward when high school kids are coming up saying, "Is this long enough?" Never really enjoyed that part of the job, but yeah, that's yeah. I don't know. I don't even know why we're talking lacrosse, but
Dude, that's where this podcast goes. It
I
just
know.
fucking rolls. You never know
Yeah.
where it's gonna end up.
no, I think I don't know if we. Josh, our producer, sometimes does questions. What's your favorite? I'll throw out a couple. Your favorite sports movie of all time?
Favorite sports movie of all time. I mean, Miracle's definitely up there.
Okay. We had to break it down for Murph, I think. Greg Murphy when he was here because we went like baseball, you know,
Yeah, we went a little.
but sports movie in general.
And I do love like Major League, like stupid movies like
Well,
that
that's
too.
one. That's
But
a great
like-
one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like Miracle is one of those movies like you'll laugh, you'll cry, you feel for these guys. It's
A lot of
riddled
history,
with
yeah.
history.
Yeah.
And then go into Lake Placid, and then you watch that movie and you think about it, and so there's,
Right.
it's on a lot of levels there.
What's cool, I brought my daughter's Pee Wee team up to Lake Placid for a tournament, and we got to play in the 1980 rink, and we were the home team. And I searched long and hard for plaid pants, and I couldn't find any. But being on that bench was one of the cooler things I ever experienced as a coach, because you're like, it's one like skating in the rink. Like you go up to
we
the
played in there.
rinks and stuff, or for the camps and stuff. You skate on the ice, and it's kind of cool. The first time you're in the building, or you do a game there. But standing on that bench, man, that was like you get those chills when you first step on the bench, and you're like, fucking Herb Brooks was here. You know what I mean? Like this is some cool shit.
Right.
And but yeah, I mean, Slapshot's mine all day. But yeah, Miracle is. We've talked about that one before.
What do you think of Rudy? Our last guest hates Rudy.
Greg Murphy. It's a real right now.
So
it's
funny.
blowing
He's
up.
like, I hate Rudy.
I hate
no,
Rudy.
I
Fucking hate Rudy.
I like Rudy. That's something I haven't seen in a long time. Like I wouldn't be able to quote it or anything like that. But no, I like Rudy.
Yeah. But no, it was so
Hated
funny.
Rudy.
Slapshot's definitely up there. And after working in Johnstown a few times,
Isn't it great your first time there?
And
Yeah.
that's
Like
the only
in
time
that
it's
building.
great.
Well, yeah, and then it sucks after that. But just like the bricks and the door you go through.
Oh, the
and
whole
like
thing.
that.
the
So,
high
I mean,
dasher. You have
yeah,
to
you get
jump
jumped
off
down,
of,
yep.
Which I was
Yeah.
nervous about that.
Yeah.
The Johnstown was the only place I had to get stitches on site there.
Really?
Win the North American League. This was, I think, maybe 2014, and I got high sticked away from the puck in the corner, and I remember I grabbed my face, like I kneeled down on the ground, and I could feel that my lip was cut, but I didn't blow the whistle. I was working with my buddy JP Wileski. He blew the whistle, and we were working with another linesman that was very new. It was maybe like a second or third game, and it was late. It was about like late February. This game was going on, and I remember I grabbed my face. I started skating to the bench, and I remember getting halfway to the bench and thinking, man, if I'm not bleeding right now,
It's going to be bad.
I'm going to look like such a loser. So I get like halfway there. I pull my hand away, and there's like a puddle of blood in here. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding bad. So I said, I look like a badass, right? So I get to between the benches, the trainer's over there helping me out, and both teams are just like jaws on the floor, standing up, all looking at me like, what the hell do we do now?
Yeah.
And they're
Was
like,
this 1 and 2 or two
one
referees?
referee, two linesmen.
Oh, shit, yeah.
So we got one brand new referee, one brand new linesman, my buddy JP Wileski, who is really good. And they're like, hey, we're going to have to come back and give you stitches. There's really nothing we can do. And it was like 7 or 8 minutes left in the game. And it'd been a pretty rough, tough, and tumble game. So as they're taking me back, my buddy JP's like, hey, do you want us to continue the game? And I'm like, absolutely not. Wait for me. Like, earlier on in this game, the other linesman was new, and there were some things that I thought were just kind of common sense that maybe he should do that he wasn't. Mm-hmm. Like at one point, I saw somebody get put into the bench, like on a clean hit, got put cleanly into the other team's bench. JP's on the line where the play's going. He sees it happen and just skates right back. Doesn't even like look into the bench to see what's going on. The kids on the bench just put their arms up like this. And you probably kicking them in the head on the ground, whatever they're doing. This
Right.
kid gets up, his helmet's all sideways. And I'm like, hey man, when a guy gets into the bench and the line's covered, just like do something to help him. Do something to make sure he's not getting kicked in the head, all right?
Yeah, be my eyes.
So like, with a few little weird instances like that, I'm like, this game, it's late in the season, the points matter, like wait for me. I was only gone for maybe about 6 or 7 minutes. The doctor that stitched me up was absolutely gorgeous. And I remember I said, there's people like huddled
In
around
Johnstown?
me. Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember I said, I looked around, I hadn't seen what I look like at all. And I was like, joking, but I go, am I still pretty? And nobody laughed. Nobody laughed. Nobody even reacted to that. And I was like, how fucking bad is it? Holy shit. And it was only like 4 stitches in my bottom lip. But then I went and stepped out on the ice. Huge standing ovation.
Oh, that's the best.
No helmet on. I give
Hockey
a
player.
little victory skate. Like, all right, now we can keep going.
That's awesome.
And I had 2 ACHA games the next day. I popped those stitches immediately. It was just puckering
blowing
your
the
lips.
whistle.
Oh,
Yeah.
To
right,
blow the
yeah.
whistle, I just popped them within 24 hours. It ended up being all right.
That's hilarious.
I should have got stitches here. My nose. Never did. Sioux Falls, it was like a tight little rink.
Oh, I remember that rink, yeah.
And I had no visor on. And a kid, I was just skating down, coming along the boards into the corner, and the kid just had a stick up like this, just skating by me. And like I'm looking that way at the play, and he's skating like I just feel a player coming by me. I'm like, oh, he's gonna skate in front of me. And he had a stick up, and whoa, smoked me right here. And I probably should have got stitches, but it was a snowstorm, and I had to get to Des Moines for the next day. So I got bandaged me up through a little.
Did you give him a penalty?
No, I should have given him a high
sticking?
stick. Yeah.
Fuck him.
Yep.
Right?
Should have.
The one that happened in Johnstown, I didn't notice this until I watched the clip of me later. The kid that high sticked me complained about a high stick earlier in the game.
Ooh.
It definitely was an accident, but
Right.
he fell and he was laying on his stomach and his face was like this far from the puck and he got slapped in the visor with a stick. And he asked me like, hey man, what about a high stick? I'm like, your face is on the ice 6
Yeah.
inches from the puck, man. Like,
That's a low stick.
yeah, like
not a
That's
high
a
stick.
tough shit.
and he got slapped in the visor. It wasn't like it wasn't like he hit me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a funny thing where I don't think he did a good job of making it look good, but no, he definitely didn't do it on purpose.
I got cut here in Hershey one time. I had a delay penalty. I'm coming down the boards, and the kid that was touching the puck just like kind of like just slapped it. He didn't like see me at all. Like he just like turned and went boom like off the glass, and then it ricocheted and smoked me right here. And like I was like from me to you to him. And he had his back to me, so like he didn't even see me there. He just like slapped it against the boards because I was blowing the whistle to. I didn't even get to blow the whistle because he smoked me in the face. But Beaka took me. He's the best.
Well, what's up for, before we wrap this up, this upcoming season? Hockey East.
Yep.
You're excited about that?
Oh yeah, very excited.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
dumb question. But, what is how are you approaching the season? What's your goals kind of thing? Like, because a lot of people wonder, referees, like, do they just show up and start reffing? Do they not? Like players, they set goals. They set.
Yeah.
Referees do that too.
Yeah,
we
we're
all
like
do
players.
that.
You want to work the final every year. I mean, that was my goal every season.
Yeah. Work in the final is always a goal. You kind of take it one step at a time, though.
Yep.
It's a long season. You don't want to get too down on yourself because mistakes are made every year. Things are going to happen. So there's usually a couple little benchmarks you want. Like, everybody wants the bean pot.
Yep.
The bean pot's a big one. But, it's first, just getting into the playoffs. And when you get into it, you want to get to the next round. Hopefully work the Hockey East finals. Hopefully get to work the tournament. Maybe a Frozen Four. So it's always that same goal. I'm at a point in my career where, I got another full-time job. I'm a medical device sales rep. And, so you're always trying to move up to that next level. But, I'm here to stay in a sense. This is where I want to be.
Right.
And you get used to moving up a league every year. And now it feels so much more comfortable. I think this is going to be my 9th season. You just get to know the coaches and that rapport really helps,
time.
carry you through. And it makes the games more enjoyable. When you're switching leagues every year, 2 years, you got to do all that again. And you have to figure out, how do I build rapport with these coaches and how do I do it now?
Yeah.
You got to start doing it right away because you might only be there a year or so. So there's definitely a comfort when you're in a league for a while and you get to know, the players, of course, turn over a lot, but the coaches don't for the most part.
And your crew members too. Your team, your linesmen, your other referees. You're moving up into a new league. Not everyone moves with you, so you have to figure out who's how this guy works, how this guy works. That's another thing that's kind of a benefit to being in the league for a while because let's face it, at that level, the turnover and officiating isn't that big. One guy might retire or someone, but it's not like 20 guys get let go and 20 new guys get hired every year. It's pretty consistent. And you have perhaps arguably one of the best, what does he call himself? An officiating coach?
Yes.
In John Gravelise. Mm-hmm. Grav's
the best.
Who else is better to, he brought an Italian poo-poo platter in here when he came for episode 3.
Right.
Or as he would say, tree. But we love him. So any chance you get to work with him, man.
Grav's great. Actually, I got to work his last game with him.
Oh, that's awesome.
No way.
It was, we didn't know it was the last game at the moment. I didn't know.
Right.
I don't even think he knew. But we worked in UMass Amherst against Maine. And it was a lot of fun. But Grav's great as a supervisor. I think mainly because he's only been off the ice a small amount of time.
Yeah.
Right.
So he knows a lot of what we're dealing with. Sometimes when you have a supervisor that maybe hasn't skated in 20 years, things have changed. You know,
Yeah.
Big time.
Just through my course of working junior hockey, I went from, guys being able to take off their helmets and fight to, hey, if you take off your helmet, it's a match penalty.
Right.
And that was a lot of change going on there on the fly that you got to figure out as things go on. So, you have a guy that's used to that physical game and hasn't touched the ice since 2005. They're not always, the greatest resource for how the game's played today, where, Grab's only been off the ice for a few years. He knows what's going on out there. It's great.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially the play itself, like the communicating part, obviously, whether you did it 50 years ago or 5 minutes ago, the communication piece really hasn't changed much, but the game itself
Has.
So to have someone that's not too far removed, that's a great point as far as like from a learning standpoint for the game itself, Interesting.
One thing as long as we're talking about communication, I think there is a gap right now, and I'm sure you both would agree with this, that with everything going to the phones, everything going to texting, that a lot of younger people aren't great at communicating face to face.
Right.
And you have to think on your feet. You don't have 2-3 minutes to formulate what you're going to say. You have to say it now. So now you have these, let's use the USHL for an example, because they're always hiring young guys. You got a 23-year-old kid that never makes a phone call in their life.
Right.
And now they're talking to a 55-year-old man where this is where the communication happens, and it's tough to be on it. There's not as many guys that can have that good communication, somebody in another
we
generation.
talk about it. We talk about it all the time. Communication is, one of the most important things. How you communicate, how you conduct yourself. And you make a good point. An 18, 19-year-old who doesn't even talk, and does the texting now is...
I brought my cousin Aldo with me on a road trip in the American League. Went up to like New York, up Rochester, whatever, Syracuse loop, and he was with me for like Tuesday to like a Sunday night. We got home, and he texted his girlfriend the whole fucking time, like the whole time. Never once did he pick up the phone and talk to her. I was like, he's like, oh, she's pissed off at me, and I'm like, for what? I go, have you guys, like, we're 4 days in. I go, I was like, have you talked to her or have you just been texting the whole time? He goes, oh, yeah, we just text. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that is weird. Like, how do you communicate with someone? How do you get emotion? How do you get, like, that, whatever, that banter
so many
back and
things are
forth?
taken
Like,
out of
that's
context.
unreal.
You text something and someone gets
that's
pissed
the whole
off,
thing.
and you're like,
I'm not mad. Yeah, it was just
that's how they
matter of
read
fact.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, though.
That
It's
interesting.
I mean, that's a societal problem across the board, right? I mean, it's not just refereeing that we see that.
Right.
We see it kind of everywhere where, it's a big thing that's lacking with, society in general. I mean, not just kids either, adults. Right. Like you just said, it's easy to send a text and, especially if you're doing something like,
Whatever.
You're doing something that's difficult. You don't want to call and say it, so you text it.
Hey, I'm
It's
sick.
easy.
I can't ref today. Yeah, right. Sure you are. Meanwhile, you're at the beach. But you brought up something interesting, like, and I wanted to ask you about this too. Was, there's not a whole lot of like people leaving and people coming in. There's not a whole lot of turnover. And like nowadays with officiating, you worked yourself up through the ranks and had to grind through it, and you're where you are because you went through the trenches and you done all those games and you did it the right way. And now you are established here at Hockey East, and you are a finals guy or a playoff guy every year. And you don't just get that your first year in. Like you got to work your ass off to get there. Like all these kids are going right from doing a handful of midgets to doing a handful of juniors and then getting into like women's and D3 college stuff, right? And they're getting fast-tracked there so fast because there's nobody coming up. So like these kids are getting there so friggin' quick now, and they expect to be working playoffs in college hockey like tomorrow or yesterday. And I'm like, how many referee games do you have in the middle? They're like, I'm like, total. They're like 60. I'm like, I did 105 in the year I worked in the USHL, and then I did 115 my first year in the Coast League. So I was like, That's, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not even including all the other shit I ref when I was 16 years old. We had all our midgets that were 3-man and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, for you, like, when you first broke yourself into college hockey, like, you weren't working playoffs right away. Like, you had to work and establish yourself in that league and, you know, make sure that, hey, you got to buy your time because there's all sorts of older guys in the league that are established, that are the, you know, the top echelon. And, you know, when you come in and you break into a new league, you got to make a name for yourself, and you just got to kind of work yourself up. And, like, did you find that, like, when you started breaking into college hockey, or, like, because, like, I mean, you, like you said, like, I think guys that are coming from, like, pros and that kind of stuff back to college hockey, I feel like they have a better shot at surviving in college hockey than a guy just coming up through, like, youth hockey and stuff.
Yeah, you get so many, at least when I was coming up, there were so many ridiculous situations that happened because fighting was more prevalent.
Yep.
And I'm kind of ready for anything that could happen in a college hockey game. So I'll give you a good example here. I remember my first multiple fight situation, and this wasn't my first fight. This was, I think, I was living in Florida. It was probably like 2009. They had a Metropolitan Junior Hockey League team there. They had like a whole conference down there.
Yep, remember that.
And I was working on the same ice as Everblades.
Okay.
Florida Everblades there.
Oh, yeah. Great rink.
You'd see probably on average about a fight a game. Like, not a big deal. Fights happen all the time. And I remember being center ice face-off. You didn't have any feeling there was going to be a fight. And I remember one of the wingers just grabbed the guy around the head, threw him to the ground, and just start beating the crap out of him. Easy. We got to fight with an instigator. No problem at all. Then the other two wingers start to fight. And I remember, like my heart starts pounding, and I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? And it's like my memory was erased. Mm-hmm. It was like, wipe the hard drive.
Yeah.
These two guys that are fighting, I'm like, oh, everybody else is going to start now too. Nobody else started. It was just these two wingers and these two wingers. So I know there's a fight with an instigator. I forget which player did it in the first one. The second guys are easy.
Been there.
Yeah, secondary, see you later. Yeah.
5 in game, easy, even though it was just majors for fighting. Secondary fight, 5 in game. So they're off. So I'm talking to the linesman. Tyler Macarith was one of them, and Camden Knuckles was the other. And I'm like, oh, we're going to be fine. These guys know what happened. So, hey, guys, so clearly we have a fight with an instigator here. Who is the instigator out of these two guys? Because one guy beat the crap out of the other one, and the other guy did virtually nothing. And one of the guys was like, oh, I don't know, I was dropping the puck. The other guy's like, oh, I'm not sure. And both the guys went with no helmets and no gloves onto the box. So now, like, this is, as an official, there's going to be some big backlash if I screw this up.
Big time.
So I'm just, like, problem solving in my head. Okay, like, how do we figure this out? And I figured it out in my head. I go, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the penalty box to one of these doors, and I'm going to one of the kids, and I'm going to just look them in the face and say, you have a 5-minute major and a game misconduct and a minor for instigating. And on their reaction is what I'm going to do on this play.
Brilliant.
As I think about this, I'm like, I'm going to go do it right now. One of the players opens the door and goes, I don't even know why I'm in here. I didn't fucking do anything. And I go,
bingo.
Yeah. That other guy, you're done.
The answer comes out sometimes, yeah.
And I learned then, I was like, if you just know how a fight starts, you can work yourself back. Like, I'm never gonna let this happen again. I'm gonna know on this original altercation. But I figured it out in the moment. Everything worked out fine. And
no one knew.
Yeah. And then the next time multiple fight situation, I was fine.
Yeah,
Ready to go.
You said an interesting word, problem solve, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's what we do. We problem solve. Common sense. You got to use your knowledge, right? And I don't know, try to work yourself out of some situations. And I don't think people can problem solve that easily.
When you were telling, I'm in my head going, I'd open the door and say to one of them, what were you thinking?
Right.
And his reaction would either be, I got the shit beat out of me, or, oh, what the fuck, you said something. You know,
yeah, right,
you know?
right. Yeah, you can get
in my
information.
head, what are you thinking?
Yep.
You know? Beautiful.
That's
Good
excellent.
stuff. Good way to end.
Yeah.
Good way to end. We've been going at it for a while, and we just jumped back on TikTok Live.
Nice.
And you said little person 6 times.
I did?
All right. Well, you were talking about doing the games. It wasn't like you were throwing it out there like a, you know.
Did I say that word again?
You said you did a bunch of
Oh, wow.
little people hockey. Anyway, who gives a shit? All right, that's going to wrap it. Walker, awesome, man. You coming on. We got to get you back on the stage, too.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. It's the last time I did stand up, I was like in my mid to late 20s, and I feel like all that material has to be thrown out.
I had you on a show we did down in where were we? Norwell or somewhere on the South Shore.
Weymouth. That was that juvenile diabetes.
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
a bike. The woman was doing a bike ride.
Yep.
My friend Nancy.
Yep,
And
that's right.
Yeah, and you went on and
I remember doing that because I was the first opener. I did about 7 minutes, and I remember I got off stage and I'm like, man, that was a good set. Like, it felt good. And then I think it was, I don't remember her last name, but I think it was Caroline.
Carolyn Plummer.
Yes.
Carolyn Plummer.
She got
Awesome.
up and absolutely smashed. And then I
Yes.
was like, never mind, I fucking suck. Like,
No, the funniest thing that night, I vividly remember, you had like a hip hop joke.
oh, yeah, yeah.
And we're in wherever, I think it was Norwell. I mean, it wasn't a very diverse crowd. And you brought up the hip hop, and it was just like,
I remember
it was
the
so
joke.
funny because I'm like, all right, 4 people got that.
There was one table that loved it.
It was a great joke.
I remember what it
just
was. It
not
was-
the right audience. It was hilarious.
It was something like, and I think I opened with it. It was something like, Mark called me and said, he's got this event for juvenile diabetes, and I was like, holy shit. I didn't know juvenile had diabetes. How's he gonna back that ass up? It was something along those lines.
One table.
One
right
table
down.
knew what I was
The rest
talking
of them all
about, and
like,
they loved it.
What the
That is
fuck
awesome.
is this guy talking? It's hilarious. It was, that's what I remember. It's like when I had Josh on a show, and it was a cancer benefit, and he told the cancer joke.
Like I'll
And,
tell you. No, go ahead.
Brought the whole thing to a screeching halt, but that's all right. I forgot. Yeah, I know. You forgot, all right. They specifically asked you not to come back the next year.
I haven't been back since.
But we're going to get you on one of the shows we do, maybe after a live podcast or something. I got to get you back in the biz.
Yeah, you're right.
Definitely. Got to get you back on
Get
stage.
back out there. Maybe
I wanted him,
actually.
I wanted him to do 5 minutes.
I'll
I'll
get 5 minutes. I'll get up there at one of these live shows, but maybe we can have you at one of the live shows. You can come up and do 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We got him out of retirement.
I think if it's after a podcast like this and you feel good and loose and I'm ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe,
we got to maybe make that happen.
Maybe next week on the 28th.
All right. Yeah, why not?
An idea.
You want to play golf?
We'll talk.
28th of.
So, yeah.
Next week.
Yeah,
'cause
next
this is
week, the
coming
28th of August.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing we're running a camp on the 29th, but it's Labor Day weekend. So the 28th, we're going to bring people in. We're going to hold a golf tournament and then like a little outing. And then we'll
we're gonna
do
do a live
podcast after.
And then we're going to do a comedy show.
I'm heading to Canada for that weekend to go see my parents.
Nice.
But I definitely want to be involved in whatever.
Yeah, future
next,
ones, yeah.
mm.
Absolutely.
All right. So you're out of the 28th, but you're in on the next one.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. You heard it here on episode 26.
But I do want to end on this, though. I'll tell you, working with you was an absolute fucking pleasure, and it was always like a good light environment in the locker room. Always had good stories and shit. And we're at the Garden, and we're going out for the Hockey East final. And like those are the best events because like you got Friday night, you got 3 crews in there, so you got a whole bunch of guys in there, and it's like a great hangout, great celebration at the end of the season, this and that. And I was fortunate enough to get the final that year. And, we're all talking, and he's in the locker room before we go out, and he goes, hey, guys, don't get nervous. He goes, but I'll be watching. And then he gets out. Like I'll tell you, all the nerves that you have going in, like everybody just kind of was like, all right, Walker's he's going to watch us. We're good. But like I just remember having like a laugh before, like you get your nerves, you get all worked up before you get out there, right? Like you're human, you get nervous, but like you just broke that tension, and I'll never forget that. I always laugh about that. But,
oh yeah.
I text Jeremy Tufts before every game he has, big game like that. Like, hey, I don't want me to make you nervous, man, but I will be at home watching. But good luck out there, man. I'm rooting for you. Try not to think about it that I'm watching.
Oh, dude, that was one of the funniest things.
That's awesome.
I had to bring that up. That was funny.
That is awesome. I think the first time we met, I was like, Walker Holton, you should be a country singer. And you're like, yeah, I haven't fucking heard that 100 times. And I was like, I like this kid.
I think the first time I met you was at the Calhoun. I went and saw one of you. I just moved here.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You came up and you were like, I'm a referee doing, and I'm a comedian. And I'm like, don't fucking step on my shit. No, but we hit it off right away.
I wouldn't mind stopping there for a chicken finger on the way home.
Yeah, we got to drive by on the way home. Never know. Kelly's is always an option. All right, before this thing hits fucking 3 hours.
Well, it's our long ending.
Yeah, last week we had the meeting after the podcast, the sit down. We're like, we got to kind of shorten up the episodes a little bit, I think. We're going to, then we fucking run a marathon like an Ethiopian. They run marathons, don't they? Kenyans. I meant Kenya. Kenya.
There you go.
Either way.
Olympic season.
It is the Olympic season. It is. And by now, well, how many people are going to see the end of this?
The end's usually the best part.
It is.
It's always
it
the
really
best.
is. Although the best ending ever still is Billy Stewart.
Oh, that was unreal.
We're doing this, right? And I'm like, all right. And he just gets up. He walks around the table. He's like, all right, boys, this was fun. We're trying to do that. And then he went over and talked to Josh, and we're trying to close it out.
Yep, just make sure you join us on Spotify. Or this.
Best ending ever. But yeah, definitely. So we want to thank AOA Studios, where we tape this great podcast. I want to thank the Referees Crease, our title sponsor, and your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. Want to thank all the guys here at AOA that make this thing happen. Mike and Z, Cam and Josh. And want to make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube. Got to get those subscriptions up, so always like and subscribe. And follow us on the social medias, the Instagram, the Facebook, and the TikTok. And I think we're live on the TikTok right now as we're finishing this out. And so make sure to like and subscribe. Find us on the socials. And we'll see you next time right here on Chirping Zebras.